Well, hey there. Welcome to the Teresa Lusk Show. I'm Teresa Lusk, your host. We're here to just educate and inspire. And today we have a phenomenal guest. Listen, today we're going to talk about some hot topics, and it takes somebody like my next guest to really deal with these things. And I have here for you Genevieve Collins with Americans for Prosperity. Welcome to the show, Genevieve.
Teresa, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Right now is a fun time in our nation. Listen, I'm sure you heard last night's farewell speech. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Trump cuts, tax cuts. We're going to talk about the nation becoming great again. And so I can't wait to discuss all these things with you. But listen, first of all, I don't know if you know this about me, but I am big on promoting women and encouraging them to be all that they need to be. And, I know that you are just a go-getter. You're a strong businesswoman. You have so much behind you. I mean, you've run for Congress before. You are a leader for the Americans for Prosperity and more. Take just a little bit to tell us a little bit about you, and then we're going to get into some exciting topics.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have fun today. But my background, I'm a seventh generation Texan. So, if you know anything about a Texan, you know how much we love to talk about Texas.
That's right.
But seventh generation Texan, I am born and raised in Dallas. I'm currently coming to you from Austin. I've been here for the opening of the Texas legislative session this week. But my background is I'm an athlete. I spent 7 years as a rower. I competed in the NCAA championship 3 times. I was on the Olympic development team. So that's how you know I'm actually crazy, because I was a rower and woke up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to work out. Now I just work in politics. But prior to being in this arena, I spent 12 years working with my father at our family company, helping build one of the largest ed tech companies in the country, really focusing on two things: making sure every child has a world-class education and
Mm,
closing the achievement gap in schools. And,
mm.
and thirdly, we really focused and put out the first product to ensure that Hispanic students were tested in their native language and not identified to have literacy issues when they have language issues. And so spent my career in education and then decided to be a crazy person publicly and tell everyone that I was running for Congress. And I
Mhm.
was the Republican nominee for Congress in Dallas, Texas in 2020. And now I lead Americans for Prosperity and the Libre Initiative. And I've been 4 years here.
That's wonderful. The Libra Initiative, would you say that's the same as Americans for Prosperity, but in the Spanish version of it?
Yes, I would. It's our sister organization that focuses on educating, equipping, and activating Hispanics on policy so that they're included in the conversation and the American dream.
Listen, I think that's wonderful. I actually did look up the Libre, and I was looking at the host, and he does a great job on the shows and everything. And I thought this is good because I'm a Latina. I don't know if you know that, but I'm a Latina, and I've been trying to reach our people, trying to educate our people because, as you know, when the election was going on, the liberals, the Kamala Harris camp, they were really trying to pull our people in by bringing in principles that we don't actually support. Yes, there's some people who do, but the majority of us are very conservative. Just a lot of people don't know it because people don't have those conversations, as you just said. Right. So I think that's wonderful. So thank you for doing that. First of all, Americans for Prosperity are they're running a $20 million campaign, and I can't wait to hear all the details about that. But I heard a beautiful as I was doing research and preparing to bring you on, I heard you talk about your grandmother Calvert, and she has this. Oh, listen, I wrote it down. I wrote her what she said down, but I want you to share. Your grandmother was the first woman to be elected at city council for the city of Dallas. Is that correct?
That is back in 1957.
Okay, so you already have this legacy of women being built up and doing. And listen, I'm all for the men being wonderful too, but as a woman, I know that it's been harder. We have all the great opportunities, but we're still catching up. So I think this is wonderful. So can you share with our viewers what is that saying that your grandmother said?
Oh gosh, she had so many. I don't know which one you're specifically talking about, but my grandmother, she was the matriarch of our family. And she said, Jenny, if you can dream it, you can do it. Nothing
That's
should
right.
be holding you back.
That's right.
And, I'm actually wearing some of her jewelry. I wear something of hers every day. She's no longer with us, but
Oh,
to keep
well,
her
I'll tell
memory
you.
alive,
I,
I try to keep her on me and with me at all
yeah,
times.
that's sweet. I will tell you. She said, "Strong women dream big."
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
Strong women dream big. And I was like, wow, that's such a great, great saying. I love it. But I want to go back to the $20 million campaign. Tell us about that. Why is Americans for Prosperity doing that? And what does your organization represent, not just for the state of Texas, because this is not just a Texas thing, this is a national thing. So talk to us about that, and how does it affect people? How is it going to affect? How is this $20 million campaign actually benefiting anybody?
Great question. So, Americans for Prosperity and the Libre Initiative are involved in spreading a $20 million campaign that's going to raise awareness about the need to pass the 2017 Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts are set to expire on December 31st of this year, 2025. And we want to get out ahead on this. And let me kind of paint the picture for you, Teresa. We have spent the last 4 years dealing with, honestly, an economic crisis. We have had inflation, we have had high interest rates, we have had housing prices that have become unattainable, we have had high grocery prices, high gas prices. Everything has gone higher. I mean, even yesterday, there was a report that was put out that says that on a monthly basis, Americans are paying $1,179 more per month than they were in January of 2021. Americans can't afford to give any more of our dollars
That's
away
right.
and get less.
That's
And
right.
what we're really trying to highlight is that the Trump tax cuts of 2017 actually provided tax cuts for every income bracket and
Mhm.
as well as every business bracket, sole proprietorships, small businesses, um, entrepreneurs, mid-sized businesses, large-sized businesses. And if we don't pass, or let me rephrase, if Congress does not pass the tax cuts or extend them, it will be a massive tax hike on every American. The
Mhm.
average price will be $1,500 more on your tax bill in 2026.
Mhm.
Americans can't afford that. In Texas, where I'm based, that number is not $1,500. That number is $2,870. That
Oh,
is real money.
yes,
And
yeah.
we've already suffered the bad effects of bad economic policy. When we couple tax cuts and not, with lowering inflation,
Mhm.
that's where America needs to be to have an economic boom. And I think that's what the Trump administration is going to quickly be focused on. But that's why we're highlighting it. We need people to tell their stories. We need people to be galvanized and say, "Oh my gosh, I've had enough of having the
Yes,
government in my wallet. I
yeah,
need a break." And so we want to really just have normal people, regular people share that, "Hey, that's me. I don't want a tax hike. I
that's
want to
right.
keep more of my hard-earned money," and
Yeah.
that they can join our movement.
That's good. So there's a lot of talk in the media about the tax cuts being those that are going to benefit the rich. And can I tell you that everybody needs some benefits right now? I mean,
Yeah.
everyday Americans, we need benefits, we need jobs. Um, is this going to affect? Is this push for these tax cuts? Is it really just um, to benefit the rich? I mean, is that really what we're dealing with? To benefit those who are at the top 1%, 2%? What's the deal with that?
No, I mean, there will be a tax cut for every income bracket.
Okay.
And while, the top 1% may pay more taxes overall, like
Mhm.
they pay a larger share of the tax
Right.
burden, but that doesn't mean that everyone doesn't get their slice of a cut. And that's what we're also really trying to highlight is that low income, middle income folks, they deserve the same breaks that anyone else in the top 1% does. The proportion might look different in terms of those dollars, but it doesn't mean that they should be excluded. And
That's right.
so we think that it's important that everyone gets a break because we can't afford another 4 years of what we've just lived through under the Biden economic policy agenda.
Yeah, that's for sure. And, for those of you who are tuned in or who just tuned in, we are on with Genevieve Collins. She is the director of Americans for Prosperity, and we're here to talk about real issues going on. We will talk based on a conservative perspective, but here's the thing: this topic that we're talking about, it actually applies to everybody, regardless of which side of the aisle you are on. This is so very important because, Genevieve, there's a lot of what I've noticed is that there are a lot of people celebrating the Joe Biden administration. I've watched even from the comments. You're on social media, this. I watch the comments, and I think this is really interesting how so many people praise him. But I was thinking to myself, how, and this is an honest question. I wasn't trying to be degrading to anybody. How can you praise this administration in this season when I know without a doubt that your pocket has been affected, that your groceries have tripled, that you have had to pay so much more money in gas, that everybody's passing on the cost to you? And how are we celebrating such an administration when we've been hurting this much? What can we say to our friends that are on the opposite side of the aisle? They're upset about the Trump administration coming in. What can we say? Because the first thing we need to deal with is the financial issues.
I would say financial issues, and Teresa, your points are so well founded. The financial issues are nonpartisan. Financial issues affect every ideology. No one is excluded, right? And I think that sometimes we have to remember that everyone is a part of like suffering equally under inflation.
Yeah.
Inflation hurts those the most that can afford it the least.
Mhm.
And while the Democrats say that they want to always support the low income and the poor, their policies actually adversely affect that class disproportionately. And what I think where we should be as a nation is saying, we just had a referendum on the economy, and people don't believe that Kamala Harris, they clearly didn't believe that Kamala Harris could solve the economic woes of everyday people. And, and even more so, didn't no one believe that she would stop government overspending? And
Mhm.
I think that Trump presented a case that said, we're going to have a Department of Government Efficiency. We're going to try to work to create transparency. We've got
Mhm.
to actually get our jobs, like we got to help grow our economy. We've got to spur economic investment. And people believe that he did that because he will do that because they actually had an experience of what that looked like prior to the pandemic. So
That's
all
right.
that being said, we have to remember that as Americans, we all suffer under bad economic policy. No one is absolved of that. And at the end of the day, I think genuinely Americans want what's best for themselves, their families, and their neighbors,
That's right.
regardless of their ideology. And we really need to get back to that principle and foundation.
Absolutely. How does this benefit Americans for Prosperity? Because I can see people, I like to be objective as possible. So how does it benefit your organization for you to be for Americans for Prosperity to be running this $20 million campaign? How does that benefit? Is there something that you're benefiting from, or is this just something that you're doing for the sake of our nation, for the sake of Americans getting back to the place of prosperity?
Well, in the landscape of politics and policy, there's think tanks, there's the party system, there's all sorts of specialists when it comes to social issues. Where Americans for Prosperity is, we are the taxpayer champion. We focus solely on taxpayer issues. So how does your money get spent? And how do you get the best benefit for your hard-earned dollars contributing to government efficiency and our country running? So in our kind of lane, we see that extending the Trump tax cuts is absolutely part of our policy agenda, but consistent with how we are aligned in the whole policy and political ecosystem. Because to be honest, there are not very many taxpayer specialists. There's taxpayer foundations and associations and tax all sorts of stuff, but no one's actually talking to the grassroots, the real people at the
Mhm.
bottom who are genuinely affected. And that's where we live. We hear about what's happening in communities across the country, and we say, let us help be a platform and give you a microphone to share your story and have a voice. And so for us, we don't get a benefit from, being out there talking about the need to extend the Trump tax cuts, but we see it as our moral and policy responsibility to educate communities across the country about this and include their voices so that they can actually have a say in the policies that Congress votes on.
That's good, yes. I think that's great because as you're talking, I think it's important for our viewers to know that, whether you agree with it, whether you line up with it, again, because, you're pushing the Trump tax cuts, et cetera. This is still it's still a nonpartisan issue because you are fighting for people who didn't vote for Trump. You're
Right.
still fighting for people who did not vote for Trump so that they can get more money in their pockets. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. Every American deserves to have a tax break.
That's
It's
right.
just the bottom line.
Yeah. So what are some challenges that you foresee happening as, you know we wanna get back to this place of tax cuts and a prosperous America again. What are some challenges that we might experience?
Well, first off, there in Congress, there's a process challenge. Is Congress going to use one bill or two bills through reconciliation to pass policy? The House wants to have one big bill, whereas the Senate wants to have two smaller bills. How do we prioritize border security and like unleashing American energy as well as economic relief and tax cuts? So I think there's a challenge in terms of understanding how the leaders of each of the, three institutions in DC, how they're going to really prioritize which policies to pass. Americans need to see that whether it's Congress or the Senate or the presidency, that that these folks are getting to work and really working to get economic relief, working to secure the border, working to unleash American energy. So there's a process challenge. Secondarily, there's a narrative challenge on, well, the tax cuts didn't help me. What am I going to get? The tax cuts are only for the rich, right? There's that narrative that Democrats have been pushing for about 8 years. And the reality is that Democrats are going to be equally as affected by a
Yes.
tax hike,
Yeah.
regardless of their tax bracket. They're going to be just as much impacted if these tax cuts don't get extended. And maybe, Democrats want that because it's good for midterms. The Democrat elected folks want that. But the reality is that there is a narrative challenge, and we want to get out in front because taxes are scary. They're scary, but they're wonky and obtuse and difficult to understand. And
Mhm.
we just need to talk about taxes as normal people. Like, hey, to be honest, like, I don't really want to pay more taxes and get less benefit from it. Like,
That's
it
right.
doesn't have to be that complicated. So that's
Yeah.
why we're talking about it. But those are the two biggest challenges.
Okay. I want to kind of move over and talk a little bit about still kind of in the same topic, but talk about jobs. I want you to explain to our viewers what the Job Act is. One of the things we love to do here is we love to educate. So I want you to talk about the Job Act, but also I want to say this that as we talk about the topic of jobs, can I tell you that I know people who are looking for a job, and I mean faithfully, and they're looking for employment, and the jobs are not there. Like the job market is absolutely terrible. And I've heard it from people who are looking for high level positions and even more entry level positions. And this is really frustrating because this is part of how this administration affected America. Whether this isn't even personal, this is just actions and results. So we have to look at that. We cannot pretend that we don't see the evidence right in front of our face. I personally know several people who are looking for a job. So talk to us about what this is doing, what the Jobs Act, and then what do you see happening? What's going to happen with this? I mean, there's people wondering.
So the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 is kind of one big package. So we talked a little bit about the tax cuts. The jobs portion of it is how are we stimulating the economy because of corporate tax cuts, how are we reducing their tax burden to actually increase their investment in employees, in talent, and in spurring more economic development, right? So you kind of you use the tax cuts to beget more employees through the Jobs Act. And that's kind of the easiest, less wonky way in my mind, to describe it.
Okay.
And so what we want to see is, and I think with what we experienced in 2017 when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act went into effect, we saw a huge spur of economic growth. So we saw capital go into the markets. So right now, what we've experienced the last 4 years, there's been a lot of private investment that's just kind of sat on the sidelines, that's not gone into invest in companies, to invest in more economic development. That's just the reality. When interest rates are high, people don't spend a lot.
That's right.
And so what we want to see is that when the tax cuts, they implement lower tax rates and tax burden, that corporations can actually increase their bottom line, which means they can hire more people, which means they have economic certainty, which right now companies don't. So markets can stabilize.
Right.
Companies can have economic certainty. They can know how many more people they can hire. And
Yes.
and I would just say, like, last night I was at a dinner with some really big people in Austin. I mean, they hire this one gal, she's got 600 companies. And I mean, 600, that's a lot of companies.
That's a lot of jobs. That's a
You're right.
lot of jobs.
And she was really focused. Like, we were talking about, what are the problems we're all trying to solve right now? And she's like, I am focused on talent acquisition and talent development, because we need to actually get the right people in the right seats on the right bus.
Yeah.
We don't want to just fill jobs for the sake of it. We want to have high quality, high paying jobs, and really focus on talent development to jump to the next level in their own companies. And so I think when we talk about tax cuts, we also can talk about economic growth and development in the marketplace and across companies, big or small.
Okay. So it's a one package deal and you can't separate it. But I think a lot of times people also assume, when they don't like the way that conservatives really like to stimulate the economy, because they think we are just for the rich. And actually, you're kind of stating why it's important, because they are the ones that actually, if you cut their taxes, they're able to reinvest that in employment and things of that nature. So that's why that fits together, and I think it's so important right now. Can Americans have some hope that the economy is going to get better and that the job market's going to get better? And if so, I mean, how many? Maybe you can't guarantee this, but what is your estimation about when can we see some better jobs on the market for entry, mid, and high level?
Well, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did, let me tell you. But I think there's a couple things that need to happen. One, with the Trump administration coming in, they need to change and remove a lot of regulatory barriers. Not regulations that affect health and safety. Those are really important, and we need to preserve those. We need to just make sure that they're not creating unnecessary barriers. But when we reduce regulations across different businesses, for example, the energy sector, there have been a tremendous amount of regulations placed on the energy sector, whether that's subsidizing wind and solar, or subsidizing, using your tax dollars to co-pay for wind farms in the Pacific Ocean that actually end up killing fish and wildlife and whales. That's a different topic. But when we're subsidizing industries that don't need subsidy, then we're misproportioning where our dollars are spent, and we're doing it through regulatory burden. And so when we can remove those regulations, then suddenly entrepreneurs have a lot more opportunity to create more jobs, to scale their businesses. Let me give you an example. In Texas, I don't know if you know this, but Texas is ranked 5th in the country for the number of highest regulations. So Texas is behind California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey. So the
Wow.
only those four states have more regulations than Texas. We have 274,393 state regulations.
Wow.
So if you're a food truck owner, for example, there's a lot of businesses
Yeah.
that and entrepreneurs that have a food truck. Well, currently, state law in Texas says that if you live in, let's just say Dallas, Texas, you live in Dallas, there's 16 cities that surround Dallas, and your food truck goes and does work in all 16. You have to get a license
Yep.
in each of those 16 cities, municipalities, or counties, and you have to pay a fee every time you have to renew your license.
Yep.
That's like $10,000 for a
Yes.
food truck, right?
Yep.
These regulations, it might seem silly, it might seem like a small example, but these regulations end up being massive, like revenue draining barriers
Yes.
for entrepreneurs and sole proprietorships. And these food trucks are like the livelihood of a family.
Yeah.
So if we reduce those regulations, getting back to your original question, then yeah, we reduce regulations, we reduce wasteful government spending. We
Mhm.
actually say like, hey, at the federal government, we're not going to just, fund some crazy project, but we're actually going to have some level of accountability for our spend. We rein in our spending, then we're going to see the markets respond in such a robust way that I think that by the end of this year, we will have hundreds of thousands of new jobs created. And that can be entry level jobs, that can be high paying jobs. We have to beware and guard for what AI is going to do to all sorts of different jobs, whether that's entry or white collar working jobs,
Mhm.
blue collar or white collar working jobs. AI is going to change the landscape, but that should allow for innovation for like what do we really want people to be doing? And
Yeah.
so and so I think that we're going to see a huge number of job increases.
Okay, well, good. I think that's good news. I think we need some hope out here. We need some hope that the taxes are going to get cut, the jobs are going to be produced because of it, and hopefully people will get some encouragement to spend and invest. I mean, you look at the house prices. I mean, that is just so unreal. And I'm sure you know this, but that is part of the reason why a lot of Gen Zs don't want to go to college because they say they can't even afford a house anyway. So they say, why even do that? And that's a whole nother topic, but it just one thing produces another. And so it'll be interesting to see. I think as soon as Trump comes in, I would suppose that companies are going to feel a lot more comfortable making some investments and taking some risks and hopefully growing their companies. So that's why we like tax cuts and that produce jobs.
It's
So yeah.
perfectly said.
Yes, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about education. So, education is, oh my goodness, that is a whole nother deal. What do you think is going to happen in Texas, regarding education? We're looking at education reform regarding school choice. I'm really hoping that something gets done. It's time to see our students be able to benefit from choices. So what is going on, and what do you think is going to happen?
Okay, let me tell you, like, stay on the hope train because there is so much good stuff that's happening in Texas. We have changed, and Americans for Prosperity, we're responsible for helping elect more policy, more legislators that want school choice. We
Mm,
helped out, we have primary a bunch of people that were barriers to school choice policy. Well, we
mhm,
got them out of office and found better candidates that are more aligned, not only with school choice, but with freedom, with opportunity and prosperity. So that being said, I
mhm,
am super bullish on where Texas stands going into this current legislative session. We're working to pass universal school choice through education savings accounts. So, what does that mean? That means that every child in the state of Texas will be eligible to go to the school of their choice. That means parents' voices are empowered. That means parents have the opportunity to investigate where they want to send their child to find the best school that best fits their unique child's needs versus
mhm.
just sending them to a one size fits all, government run school based on their zip code. So I'm really excited about where we stand. we have the votes for the first time in Texas history to
Mm,
pass this bill out of the Texas legislature. That was really what we spent the last 2 years working towards, is identifying who needs to leave office, and
mhm,
who can we replace those folks with really pro school choice legislators. And we now have the votes for the first time in Texas history. Teresa, I'll just conclude by saying, when Texas passes universal school choice, it will
mhm,
be a watershed moment for the rest of the country,
mm,
because there's 5 million students enrolled in public schools. And we're not, at Americans for Prosperity and the Libre Initiative, we're not in this false argument about public versus private schools. We believe in all schools: public schools, private schools, religious schools, charter schools, micro schools, home schools, learning pods, virtual schools. We want to see as many choices that are going to best and uniquely apply to each individual student, so
yeah,
that every student has the chance to flourish, every student has a chance to have a world-class education, regardless of the four walls that they are within, but
yeah,
that every child is set up for a bright, prosperous future
mhm,
and joining our workforce and being a real driver in it.
yeah. I think that's part of the fear, but I have a lot of educator friends, and a lot of their fear is that, one, they think that, it's going to just hurt the students that cannot afford, but this would set up students of every income bracket. Is that correct? I mean, is this something that they would be everybody's going to benefit regardless of your income bracket?
Eventually, yes. So the goal is that in statute, in law, it becomes universal. That means every child in the state of Texas is eligible. The practicality and reality of it, though, is that the state is going to prioritize low income students,
Mm,
students trapped in failing public schools, and students with disabilities. Those are going to
mm,
be the kids that get the first round to be a part of school choice. So we're not
interesting.
prioritizing rich families. They already have school choice. We're
Mhm,
not focused on them. We're focused on making sure that minority students, low income students, students with disabilities, and even worse, students trapped in failing public schools, they get the first opportunity out. And so you will see in Texas, we are going to prioritize different, I would say, like bands of students.
mhm.
We're going to focus on this first band for the first 2 years of
You know, that's
implementation.
very interesting because I haven't heard that before. So all you
Yeah,
hear is the negative side of this. Now, I'm all for school choice. I really think that equality means we get to equally choose what we want to do. And of course, I say, the money doesn't belong to the government; it belongs to the people, right?
you're such
So
a queen.
yeah, I mean, it belongs to us. So I want to be able to say where my child is going to go. But I love what you're saying, that they're going to focus on minorities and those of lower income brackets, because the naysayers of the media and those who are pushing the narrative is that this is going to hurt more than help. Now, obviously it can have some adjusting. I do believe that there could be some adjusting. Although, Genevieve, I actually think that this is actually an amazing opportunity for those who are in the education field. Listen, I have educator friends who are so exhausted physically, emotionally, and I taught for 5 months, and I couldn't, the offer to continue was just not reasonable, you know what I mean? And so, um,
Yeah,
uh,
it's a
but
hard job.
it is, but I think that this actually opens up the door for entrepreneurship for some amazing educators, and I've thought about this. Can
Yes.
you imagine some educators getting together and saying, "We're done with your system, we're done." I mean, these teachers are worn out, worn out. So,
Exactly.
what are some benefits? Because we talk about entrepreneurship. We are wanting to see America being prosperous. That's why your organization exists. How can that actually work? Maybe there's some educators who are going to watch this. I know there's educators who are going to watch this because I have educators that watch this. What are some things that they could foresee and go, you know what, maybe I'll tap into that opportunity?
So I'd say a couple things for educators that are watching. The facts of this bill is that there's not going to be any money taken away from public education to
Mm,
to supplant into school choice policy. So
Okay.
just, I think that
It's
there's a
wonderful.
ton of misinformation out there, but the
Mm,
way that the bill is drafted is that the K-12 budget, which is $85 billion in Texas, that comes out of the general revenue fund. Now that's really wonky, but that is not going to change. We're not pulling
mm,
money out of the general revenue fund to pay for an education savings account. What we're doing is taking, so Texas just released on Monday, we have $24 billion in surplus, $24 billion in economic surplus. We're going to take a portion of that surplus to pay for school choice policy and school choice
mhm.
programs. So
It's
the
wonderful.
budget's not going to be affected. The K-12 budget is not going to be affected. But
Mm,
secondly, for teachers, I mean, they're like the exhausted majority. You
yes.
know, these teachers are remarkable and they give so
Yeah.
much to kids.
Yeah.
And what school choice is going to do, it's going to create more, it's going to create more jobs. Honestly, there's
Yeah.
going to be more schools that open. There's an organization called Vela Fund, VELA, Vela Fund, and they go out and they fund small startup schools.
Wow.
They fund principals with a vision, you know, whether that's a, you know, a
See?
religious institution,
Yeah.
whether that's, you know, being like, I want to have an outdoor school, right? It's funding innovation in education. And,
Mhm.
you know, there's parameters, but it's really focused on the educational entrepreneur, supporting them to
Yes.
allow their dream to come true,
That's
because
right.
their dream is going to look very different than what their
Mhm.
current K-12 environment looks like.
Yeah.
And why not fund that innovation, give those kids, kids a different opportunity, a different learning style. That's already happening here in Texas,
Yeah.
and we're just going to see more of that.
I think that's wonderful. That excites me as an entrepreneur. That excites me because as soon as I heard that that was going to be some of the options there, I thought, how can teachers not jump on this? But see, here's the thing, that they are trained in the education system to fit in a box and
Yeah.
only do in a box. So anything of stepping out, it scares them. Like you're messing with my security. And I get it. You know, if I thought, okay, there was going to be funding that's going to be taken away, that means my job will no longer exist. But in fact, it actually increases your opportunities is really what it's going to do. And
Yeah.
there are some phenomenal teachers out there that are ready to, you know, hit the floor running, I think. And so I can't wait. I really do hope that everything goes through. You know, there's always the dividing opinions. Some people say Texas is doing a horrible job in the education system, and then some people say, I will say by the evidence, we need some help. We need to see some better things happening here. I think last session, I just think that it there was a lockdown like on both sides. And so I'm this year it needs to happen for the sake of our students and for the sake of our education system. And really, if you get educators who feel good, who feel well, I just think they'll do the best that they can. They'll be able to teach. They all say, I just want to teach. I
Yeah.
don't want to follow all this. I just want to teach.
Yeah,
So
I don't want to teach to a test. I don't want to have every part of my success be wrapped up to one end of year high stakes test. I mean, Teresa, let me put this in perspective. I spent 12 years in the education industry working
mm,
with teachers and principals.
mm,
Let me put this in perspective. It takes longer to test a 9-year-old in third grade, to take a 9-year-old to see if they know everything that they need, reading, math. It takes longer for them to justify or take that test, the end of year test, to go into the fourth grade than it takes a 24-year-old to to take the bar exam. Okay, so
wow.
we're putting 9-year-olds in this crazy ecosystem of testing to
Yeah.
see if they know the work to get into fourth grade when we're having students that are 24 taking the Texas bar exam to become lawyers. What is wrong with that picture?
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that they're gonna do away with the testing? Because I actually hate the testing even when I was teaching for the 5 months, and I've done substitute work before, but when I was teaching, I saw the anxiety on these kids. It is terrible. They're anxious, they're tired, their faces are just downcast. I mean, it is too much, and I think this is so absolutely absurd and unnecessary. Do you see some changes coming with that?
God, I hope so. I mean, here, you know, in Texas, everyone hates the end of year star test. There was a lot of chatter to get rid of it last year. We'll see if that continues. I think with the education savings bill that's happening on school choice, what we're trying to do is say, listen, we know that there needs to be accountability. Absolutely.
Yeah,
These are tax dollars, there needs to be
right.
accountability. But we should use a nationally norm referenced assessment. You can progress monitor throughout the year in a very short amount of time compared to, taking a week in April to do this one shot, high stakes end of year test. When you can
Mhm,
do continuous progress monitoring to validate student learning and student outcomes over time, we're going to reduce student anxiety, increase student outcomes, and have a much better body of work, a portfolio of work to see that what the
mhm,
student has attained knowledge than just this one big test. So we're putting that language into the bill already, that there needs
mhm.
to be accountability through that nationally norm referenced assessment. Here's the deal. Every school district in the state of Texas already uses a nationally norm referenced assessment.
Yeah,
So why don't we just let that be the law and
right.
not have to do these one shot, high stakes
Yes.
tests?
That would be wonderful. That would be great. So let's jump into the last topic here that I want to tackle, and that is just getting into politics, women getting into politics. How fun is that, Genevieve? I think that, the,
It's wild.
it is, but there's an increase going on right now of women jumping into the political realm. Uh, I don't know if you know this, but uh, liberal women are higher in numbers than the conservative women, and I'm always trying to recruit, and say, "Come on, you can do it. Get out there." Talk to us a little bit about what's been your experience with women, and why is it so important for us to jump in and fill a spot and really run with a vision and a passion for America, for our state, for our city, for our county, etc.
Well, first off, women matter. I mean, that's the bottom line, right?
That's right.
Like,
Yeah.
we make up half of the population. We make up more of the graduate school and a college graduate population than men. But the reality is, we have a unique perspective. And I
Mhm.
think that as a woman, being able to stand up and being a strong woman at that, like, we need examples. Women need to show that there's examples of saying, wait a second, my perspective might be different, but it is equally as important. Because I think
Mhm.
that what we see, I always like to say, like, this is not like men versus women, but I think women
Right.
can actually take a step back and look at the larger picture. It's
Mhm.
not that women are, from a policy perspective, more demure and
Right.
will, kowtow. No, we're more specific. We
Yeah.
are able to see the whole picture and see how one policy can be implemented and
Yeah.
how that's going to affect more people. And so I think as a woman that's in politics, I love talking to young women about it because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, someone is going to raise their hand
That's right.
to be the person. Why
Yeah.
not you? I
That's
ran for
right.
office. I didn't know beans about it. I didn't know what I was doing, but I thought, you know what? I'm tired of having octogenarians make huge sweeping life choices for
Yeah.
me and that they will never be affected by the policies that they're passing. Like, it's time for them to go to bed and retire. And we need a younger generation with business acumen, common sense, and a sense of urgency to
Yeah.
actually step up. And I thought, as I looked around the table, I saw all these men, like, get like anxious to raise their hand. And I thought,
Mhm.
well, I don't know anything, but I could figure it out. And
There you
like,
go.
why not me? And
That's right.
ultimately, like, that's really my message to women is like,
Yeah.
why not you?
Yes.
You matter,
Yeah.
and your perspective will add so much more dimension and color to
Mhm.
improve the lives of people, and we need more of that.
That's right. And I think also it's important. The reason why I bring up conservative women is because, as you saw in this recent election, we had a woman, Kamala Harris, who was promoting things that weren't really safe for our families and our children. So, in this season, maybe things will change eventually, but in this season, the liberal left right now, they're pushing policies that would be so harmful to women, by the way. I mean, I'm so thankful that we finally have some protections coming. But me as a female, having a daughter, having grandbaby girls, 2 grandbaby girls, I don't want my children to not be safe. So as a conservative woman, I'm going to promote those kinds of policies. And I think that's why it's important for women. And like you said, why not you? I don't think most people, a lot of people who are in politics, females, I should say, I don't think that was their life plan. What do you think?
Yeah,
Right?
no, totally agree. And this was not on my bingo card when I was 33 and decided like, oh, well, I'll go do this. Yeah, not
Right.
on my bingo card.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What else do you want to share as we get close to wrapping this up, Genevieve? I mean, I think this is wonderful. I think we need to make sure that we're supporting tax cuts for the sake of jobs, for the sake of the prosperity of Americans. We really need to support energy, which I know we didn't get too much into that. I think it'd be really great to bring you back on one day and talk about energy specifically,
I would
because
love that.
yeah, I think that's a topic that is so complicated. And when politicians and political community leaders talk about it, they talk about it as if everybody knows what y'all are talking about, and we really don't. We really don't. Like there are people who invest their time in researching that, but these aren't, this is not my cup of tea necessarily, but I know it's very important because I don't like paying at the gas pump the prices that we were paying. And so I think it's very important. But are there any other things that you think are important for our viewers to know as far as what your organization's doing and anything? What do you want to
Yeah.
add?
So I would just conclude by saying what we are trying to build here in Texas at Americans for Prosperity is a freedom, opportunity, and prosperity movement. We have launched our campaign called Freedom is Bigger in Texas
Mm-hmm.
because there's actually a lot of areas where Texas needs to expand freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And as Texans, we should be the tip of the spear demanding freedom from our legislature. We should be demanding opportunity and a more prosperous future from our legislature, and we're going to be the tip of the spear on that. So I just encourage any of your listeners to join our movement. Our website is freedomisbigger.com. You can watch videos, you can sign
Mm-hmm.
petitions. Those petitions will go to your lawmakers automatically. You can sign up to be an ambassador of Texas. Like, what does that mean? That means you're going to be a leader in your community about a policy you care about. And oh, by the way, we will help educate
Mm-hmm.
you. We will
I love that.
empower you, and we will help connect you to your
Mhm.
lawmaker. So, when you work with AFP or the Libre Initiative, this is a partnership. This is a hand in glove relationship. We're there to empower, to educate, and to equip our communities to demand more freedom in Texas and ensure that freedom is
That's
bigger
good.
here. Because I just think that Texas has to be the shining
Yes.
example for the rest of the
Yes.
country. And when we work, everyone else wants to be like
That's right.
us. And that's just more freedom, more opportunity, and prosperity for
That's right. Well,
America.
thank you that you said it wonderfully. And also, we can't be like those other states that you talked about that we have just as
No,
many
no,
regulations. I'm in
no,
shock about that. I'm
no.
actually embarrassed. Can I say I'm embarrassed? I am a Texan. I
I
was born and raised
yes,
in Dallas. I am embarrassed that we are there. It makes me go, what in the world? And who was in office when this was happening? And so I like to hold everybody accountable, though I try to be fair. Like it's across the board sometimes, and we need to deal with that.
it
Yes. Yeah.
is. It
So
is.
no, this has been
Yeah.
great. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and educate us all about the Tax Cuts and Job Act and the energy and women, all these fun topics. Genevieve, I know that people are going to be excited. Tell me again the website for your organization.
Freedomisbigger.com.
Freedomisbigger.com. There you have it, my friend. So don't forget to go check out that website. Like she said, you can be an ambassador, and most of all, they will educate you. Do you know how valuable that is? That is so very valuable right now in this season. So thank you for doing that. I'm so glad that your organization does that. And if people want to follow your organization or maybe get in touch with you, how would they do that?
So you can find me on Twitter at gcollinstx, and on our organization AFP on Twitter, it's at Texas AFP. I'm also on Instagram. It's my full name, Genevieve Collins TX. find me, DM me. Like, happy to get to know anybody, and looking forward to more
That's
conversation.
wonderful. There you have it, my friends. Genevieve, stay with us as I close with our friends. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to the Teresa Lusk Show. This was with Genevieve Collins with Americans for Prosperity, bringing good news and hope to Texas and across the nation. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you again. God bless. Thank you, Genevieve.